Hello again, Muscombe History Group channel calling again, and this time we're presenting what is our 50th programme since the channel opened at the beginning of COVID lockdown. 50 programmes, doesn't feel like that, and this one is about British Heraldry. British Heraldry and how to read it. And yes, I'm afraid it's me again. An heraldic blazon is a description in words of the painted heraldic device. It might go as follows. Barry wavy of 6, argent and azure, on a chief gules, a peacock in his pride proper, between a fleur-de-lis on the dexter, and a lion passant guardant on the sinister, or. On a wreath in the first and second, a Morphex, argent, beaked sable, holding in its beak an eel proper, mantled third, doubled first. On the dexter side, an otter proper, and a sinister side, a beaver proper, languid gules, with a motto, Deo Fratus Arumpe. Those of you who understand the language of heraldry will probably have recognized this. The coat of arms and motto granted to the town of Newark-on-Trent, which is the town that's very close to Muscombe villages. British heraldry begins with those Normans that settled in Britain after the conquest. The Norman knights brought over the early French system of heraldry. It was then modified to become the British heraldry system. Geoffrey Plantagenet, the Count of Anjou, was granted these arms that appear on his tomb by Henry I in 1128. A coat of arms is granted to an individual. In British heraldry, it is inherited by the eldest son on the bearer's death, or a daughter if there are no male heirs, but only one person can bear the arms at any time. Each design must be unique to one living person. Designs are emblazoned and kept by heralds at the Royal College of Arms. Armorial achievements can also be granted to civic entities and commercial organizations. At the top of the heraldic system in Britain is the sovereign, and she is supported by the Earl Marshal of England, currently the Duke of Norfolk. He in turn is supported by Garter King-at-Arms, who looks after all interests in England, Wales and Ireland, whilst on the Scottish side the Lord Lion of Scotland acts in the way of the Earl Marshal, and he is supported by the Scottish Court of Heralds. But the Scottish side also has to be subordinate to what's going on in Britain as a whole. So there is a strong link between the Lord Lion of Scotland and the Garter King-at-Arms. The College of Arms is presided over by the Garter King-at-Arms, and he is assisted by Clarenceux and Norrie and Ulster. Clarenceux tends to look after southern England, and Norrie and Ulster looks after the north of England and Ireland. With them are the heralds of Chester, Lancaster, Richmond, Somerset, Windsor and York, and the pursuivants, Blue Mantle, Portcullis, Rouge Croix and Rouge Dragon. And finally the extraordinaries: Beaumont, Maltravers, Surrey, Howard, and Wales Herald Extraordinary. Letters patent are granted by the Sovereign and executed by the Royal College of Arms over the seals of the endorsing heralds. So if we look at the way that Newark's arms are made up, firstly there is the shield, the arms or the field of escutcheon. Sometimes this is the only grant of arms that is permitted for, say, a school or a college or a commercial company. To this might be added a motto. With a little more complexity, there comes a crest, and the crest is usually mounted on a wreath or torse, and this sits on the top of a helmet or helm. Since Crusader times, the helmet has usually borne a mantle. This mantle used to be a cloth that knights put on their helmets to drape down their back and keep the hot rays of the sun off their armour so that they didn't fry. But it's now being used as a heraldic device. And to each side are the supporters, who figuratively are holding up the arms. And the supporters might be given a compartment on which to stand, although the compartment isn't always mentioned in the blazoning of the arms. A little trick about heraldry: it should be remembered that the arms are for the person who would normally be carrying the shield. So the arms are registered with the right hand on our left and the left hand on our right, because the person who's got the grant of arms is behind the shield. The heraldic achievements, the coat of arms or armorial bearing, as we've said, start with the field of escutcheon, the motto, the crest, the helm, the wreath or torse, the mantle, and the supporters standing on the dexter and sinister side of the shield, where dexter is on the left and sinister is on the right as we look at them. And then the compartment, which might be mentioned in the blazon or is just a matter of artistic will. A full emblazonment can also show crowns and coronets, slogans and war cries, and badges of fealty. An example of a slogan might be the Ich Dien, carried by the Prince of Wales, and the badge of fealty is the 3 ostrich feathers of the Prince of Wales, as an example. The armorial grant starts with the field, which carries the tinctures. The tinctures can be metals, ore and argent, gold and silver, usually painted yellow and white on the shield. The colours: gules, sable, azure, vert, and purple. Red, black, blue, green, and purple. The furs: emnates and vari, 8 furs in all. And the stains: sanguine, murrey, and tenne. Sanguine is a dark blood red, murrey is the colour of a mulberry, and tenne is a brownish orange or tawny. So, argent and or, gold and silver, yellow and white. Red, black, blue, green and purple are the colours. 8 furs and the 3 stains: sanguine, murrey and tenne, although murrey is rarely used because of the possible confusion between blue and purple and murrey. Furs can be emblazoned with some artistic license. The very furs can be ver, counterver, potent and counterpotent, and the ermines can be ermine, ermines, erminoir, and peon. The very fur comes from the squirrel, and the idea is that several skins of the squirrel are laid out either on a coat or on the face of a shield, with the white breast forming a pattern in the brown fur. This can then be represented artistically by the herald as fur, very, potent, counterpotent, and in various of the colours. The erminates represent the weasel. The ermine spot is the tail of the weasel in his winter coat, when stitched on a surcoat or laid on a field, so that most of the field will be white with occasional dark spots. There's no specific date code for the spots in an ermine, so all 59 of these designs can be used to show ermine, ermines, erminoir or peon, and other tail representations can be used as well. Ermine is black on white or sable on azure. Ermines is the opposite, white on black or argent on sable. Erminoir is black on gold, and peon is the opposite again, gold on black. The field can be divided into more than one tincture. For example, if we put a horizontal line across the middle of the shield, that's described as per fez, and in this case it can be decorated in gold the metal and vert the colour, so this will be described as per fez or vert. Alternately, the line can be drawn down the centre of the shield. This is per pale and will be described as per pale, argent, and gules. A line drawn from the top right-hand corner of the shield diagonally is called a bend. So, per bend, argent, and purper. This is technically a bend dexter, but the dexter isn't usually referred to. Per bend describes a dexter bend on the shield, whereas if the bend is going the other way, from the top left-hand corner of the shield heraldically, this is known as per bend sinister. This is not a particularly popular form of decoration because most people associate the bend sinister with illegitimacy. Although this is completely wrong, it does leave a taint on the idea of having a bend sinister in your coat of arms. A cross in the form of St. Andrew's cross is per saltire, the bottom part of which is known as per chevron, the top part is per pile, and when the shield is divided by a cross, it is per cross, or more normally referred to as quarterly, because the cross divides the shield nicely into 4 quarters. These lines that differentiate colour can also be laid on the shield as solid pieces of tincture. So, for example, this is or a chief sable, a gold shield with a black chief. The next one is azure with a pale or, a blue shield with a gold pale line coming down the centre. Vert with a bend argent, a green shield with a white or silver bend, gules with a fez argent, a red shield with a line across the fez, and finally azure, a saltire argent. All of these laying on colours are the honourable charges, and there are a great many honourable charges. Any of these devices can be set as an honourable charge. Then come the ordinary charges, which are animals, people, birds, things, anything that is painted onto the shield to give it distinction. The rules of tincture say that a colour should not be painted on another colour, and a metal should not be placed on another metal. The ordinary charges are put into 7 groups. Firstly, the divines and humans. That's gods, disciples, hermits, or people. Secondly, the lion, who is the king of beasts, and other animals. Third, the eagle, who is the king of birds, and again other birds. Monsters form the 4th group, and natural objects form the 5th. These can be flowers, a tree, a leaf, or a rose, or any other object in nature. Inanimate objects might include a grindstone, a sword, a harp, or even the sleeve of a dress. And finally, the cross in its various heraldic forms makes up group 7. The ordinary charges are explained in their positions on the shield, their tinctures, or they can be described as proper, which means the artist has rendered them in a colour as close to real life as possible, the natural colour, the attitude that the charge is posed in, and any modifiers that may be present. Anything can be a charge, and the position, tincture, attitude, and modifiers make the unique statement for every particular heraldic achievement. If we look at positions on the field, the shield divides nicely into horizontal and vertical thirds. The horizontal thirds are the chief row, the fess row, and the base row, and the vertical thirds are the pale in the centre, sided by the dexter terce and the sinister terce, but notice that's dexter and sinister in its heraldic form, dexter on the left, sinister on the right. The dexter chief, the sinister chief, and the centre chief can then be described, as can the centre pallet, the sinister flank, and the dexter flank, and the centre base, and the sinister base, and the dexter base. And up here, if 1/3 of the vertical line and 1/3 of the horizontal line is taken out as a particular charge, that charge is described as a canton, or a chief, or a fez, or a pallet, or a cross. The position of ordinary charges appears on the points of the field. In the centre of the chief is the chief point, and to the left is the dexter point, and to the right is the sinister point. At the bottom of the chief row is a point described as the honour point. In the fess row appears the centre point, which is usually referred to as the boss, and at the bottom of the fess row, in the middle, is the nombral point, literally the belly button. And then in the base row appears the base point. Sometimes we can also describe the dexter base point and the sinister base point, the dexter fess point and the sinister fess point, but these are rarely described in a blazon, as something else in a formation normally takes account of these positions on the shield, as in this example. This is the English Leopards. That was a joke by French heralds. They are actually lions, and they are described as Passant guardant. So the entire arms is gules, 3 lions, passant guardant, impale, or armed and langed azure. That means a red shield, gules, with 3 lions in the passant guardant position, arranged one on top of the other, which means they are arranged in pale, and they're coloured gold, which is the ore. But they also have blue claws and blue tongues, armed and langed azure. This charge is known simply as England, which the Plantagenet monarchs combined with their holdings in a device called France. The lion passant guardant is one of several positions that a lion can be put onto the shield with. There are 9 standard positions, 3 rampant, 3 passant, and 3 stantant. The rampant position is a lion standing on one leg with one paw up in the air in a fairly aggressive manner. If he's facing to the front, it's a lion rampant. If it's looking at you, it's a lion rampant guardant. And if he's looking behind himself, it's a lion rampant rear guardant. In the next row, we can see the lion Passant, which is a lion standing on 3 legs with a paw raised. The lion Passant guardant, which appears in England, is the lion standing on 3 legs with a paw raised and facing towards us. And the lion Passant rear guardant is when he's looking behind him. Stantant is the lion standing on all 4 legs. Lion stantant is a straight-looking lion. Lion stantant guardant is a lion looking straight towards us. And lion stantant rear guardant is a lion looking behind himself. The lions can also be shown lying down, moving, or sitting. The lion couchant is literally a lion sitting down. The lion dormant is a lion lying down and asleep. The lion courant is a lion which is leaping. And the lion salient is a lion rampant, but with both paws up in the air in a much more aggressive manner. The lion sergeant is sitting down like a tame dog, and the lion sergeant erect is sitting down like a dog begging for a biscuit. A lion rampant, with its tail coming between its legs, is actually described as a lion coward, and so is any other creature that adopts the same pose. Sometimes a head can appear on its own on a shield, and sometimes the head looks as if the body has been rubbed out by the artist, and that tends to be called a head erased. Alternately, it can look as if the head has been chopped off, head couped, with a straight line taking the base of the head. A head affronte is any head which is looking straight towards the onlooker. And a head kiboshed, this is usually kept for horned animals such as deer, stags and elks, bulls and such like, and it tends to remind me of the sort of thing that used to be hung on trophy walls with a head on a wooden shield that looked as if the animal had charged the wall and only its head had come through, kiboshed. Displayed eagles usually come from links with continental families. The eagle displayed elevated is an eagle with its wings spread and the feathers pointing upwards, as opposed to an eagle displayed inverted, where the feathers in the wings either point down towards the ground or at least are placed on the level. And the eagle with 2 heads is of course described as the double eagle displayed. British heraldic eagles tend to be more naturalistic, although they can still be posed in the displayed, closed, perched and striking modes. And sometimes an eagle's head and body is tied together with, for instance, a lion's body and hindquarters, and this forms a monster. In this case, it's a griffin. Other British birds likely to appear in heraldry are the owls, which are a symbol of wisdom, doves, which are a symbol of peacefulness, hawks, which are a symbol of aggressiveness, and the blackbirds, a blackbird, a raven, a guillemot. These are normally referred to as merle. The owl can also be shown displayed, but an owl is always shown affronte, looking towards the onlooker, so that the two eyes can be picked out distinctly. And a dove is often portrayed with an olive sprig in its beak, the dove of peace. And hawks can be displayed hooded and belled as hunting hawks. Occasionally, the merle is displayed on the wing, but normally in this case it's referred to as hirundelle or the swallow. And the martlet is a very popular bird in British heraldry. The martlet representing the various martins, swifts and swallow family. They're usually shown close, that is to say with their wings folded. And there's a particular thing about the martlet in heraldry. Look, Mum, I got no feet. The reason for this is because medieval heraldic artists believed that birds such as the martin, the swift, and the swallow never actually came to ground. It was believed that they flew for the whole of their lives, so they didn't need any feet. Martlet can also be shown volant on the wing, but again, this is often referred to as hirundelle. And then come the ordinary charges in the seventh group, examples of the crosses. Most of us will recognize these crosses, even though we may not know the heraldic term that describes them. And then the characteristic cross of the red cross, the blue cross or the green cross code, the Greek cross. Other Christian symbols might include the Chi-Rho symbol, which the Emperor Constantine had his Roman troops paint onto their shields before the Battle of Meringian Bridge, where the Emperor Constantine won the entire empire. The phoenix, which is the bird that dies and is born again from the fires of its funeral. This is more of an Oriental symbol, but the idea of something rising from the dead is very much a Christian image. The pelican in her piety usually shows an eagle-type bird pecking its breast until the blood flows, and the blood is feeding the chicks in the nest below. This has obvious Christian parallels, with Christ shedding his blood for mankind. And the pall of the Trinity. The pall of the Trinity shows the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost coming together to make up the God. There's also a hierarchy of helmets. The sovereign's helm is shown with bars affronte, or bars with the helmet facing towards us in gold. The aristocracy, dukes, marquises, earls, viscounts and barons, the peerage in general, also have bars on their helmet, but they are shown in profile. Baronets and knights have open visors affronte, and esquires and gentlemen have closed visors in profile. The helms or helmets portrayed can vary, partly depending on the time that the arms were drawn up, and partly dependent on the preference of the bearer of the arms, but they range from great helms to bassinets. This is a unique set of arms. It only existed for one person, and it can never exist again. It shows England and France, which is the shield of the King of England, King Edward, but with something across the chief, that white key-like structure, which is called a label. The label is a symbol of a firstborn son. King Edward could carry the arms, and his son, Edward the Black Prince, was entitled to carry this shield, the royal arms with a label. Unfortunately, the Black Prince died before his father, so these arms are enshrined forever as associated with the Black Prince. He had no offspring to pass it on to, and his father was still alive when he died, so the label is the only symbol that differentiates it from the royal arms of the time. Similar embellishments can occur for the second-born son, a crescent, a mullet or star for the third-born son, a martlet for the fourth-born son, which is why martlets are popular in English heraldry, an amulet, a fleur-de-lis, a rose, and a cross moulin, all describing sons of the blood. If a lord gets married and has a child, the first child that he has can carry his arms with the label in chief. If there are more children on the way, then they can differentiate their shields as we've already shown, with a crescent for the second son, a mullet star for the third, a martlet for the fourth, amulet, fleur-de-lis, rose, and moulin cross. But supposing the father dies. If the lord of the manor dies, then his son is entitled to take over and carry his father's arms. He loses the label and carries the arms pure. But what about the other sons of the family? They cannot carry the arms because only one person is allowed to bear arms at any particular time. So they must go to the College of Arms and arrange for new shields to be designed. The first brother, for example, may have his shield differenced by a chief in green, a chief vert. The second brother might have a border around the shield, and the third brother might have two mullets or stars vert in chief. These arms can be passed on to the firstborn child and to the firstborn child, for both the first brother and the second brother and the third brother and any other subsequent brothers who now have their own coat of arms. And this is why the idea of a family arms comes about, because each firstborn child is entitled to continue carrying the arms associated with that family name. Now let's suppose that our new lord, with Argent, a chief gules, a lion, Passant, sable, gets married, but he marries the daughter of a duke who has died without sons, so this daughter is entitled to bear arms of her own. They might be Argent, a bend vert with a heart Gules. The arms for a lady are usually drawn on a lozenge rather than a shield, just to demonstrate a less warlike intent. But this lady will want to keep the arms to which she is entitled, and her husband will want to take on the role of a duke, with all my worldly goods I thee endow. So what can be done? The arms can be combined in various ways. They could, for instance, be dimidiated. Dimidiation shows half of one shield on the dexter, half of the other shield on the sinister. Impalement shows the dexter image of the lion's sable and the sinister image of the bend and red heart. Or it can be shown as an escutcheon of pretence. For an ordinary man who wants to become a duke by marrying a duchess, the escutcheon of pretence is a popular way of showing the arms. More likely, though, the arms will be quartered, or possibly superimposed augmentation of the arms where the various charges are superimposed one on another. Quartering was a way of denoting the third creation of the first Duke of Newcastle, who owned most of Muscombe. It shows the quarters of Bentinck and Cavendish. Cavendish was the Duke's family, and Bentinck was the family with money. And sometimes quartering can go a little mad. These are the arms of George, Marquis of Buckingham, and they have no fewer than 719 legitimate quarters. People with the name of Cavendish might use this device as a family coat of arms. But there's no such thing as a family coat of arms. The coat of arms can only exist for one person at a time. All arms can only belong to one person at a time, and this one can't be right because it's got a sovereign's helmet. However, as a piece of fun, people do buy what they call their family arms, emblazoned on cups, saucers, plates, ties, jackets, tea towels, bed linen. The family arms usually come from a source of heraldry where the family has died out and no one owns the arms anymore. Particularly popular in this field are the Irish arms, which became defunct when Ireland became a republic. Inherited arms become associated with family names. The coat of arms is still only attributed to one living individual. However, arms attributed to a named individual may be falsely carried by any family of the same name. Need not be related to the armorial bearer in any way. It's a false or pretend emblazonment. But it's still fun, and there are quite a lot of shields available. So you can buy one of these, which corresponds with your name. Alternately, you can invent your own arms. This is one I invented for myself. It's blazoned, ermine a lion passant sable, pierced in breast with a sword proper, on a chief pally of 6, gules and or, a battering ram proper, a helm esquire, with a wreath in the 2nd and 3rd, and a crest of crossed battle axes proper, with a mantle, argent doubled argent, and a motto, Parum potentes glandis quercus. Or if you're feeling flush, you can request that the College of Arms either find or newly emblazon a real armorial bearing for you. The cost of an emblazonment can be between £6,700 and up to almost £20,000. This depends on the status and the difficulty in finding or drawing up the arms. Commercial company costs tend to be more than the individual's cost. Local parish churches or castles and stately homes, such as Belvoir Castle here, can be a source of coats of arms. Here are the arms of the Duke of Rutland. And tracking down the histories and descriptions of armorial bearings can be a great detective hobby. So looking again at the arms of Newark. Barry wavy of 6, argent and azure, on a chief gules, a peacock in his pride proper, between a fleur-de-lis on the dexter, and a lion passant guardant on the sinister or. These words describe what goes on to the shield. 6 lines across the shield in white and blue, argent and azure, with a chief in red at the top of the shield, and on the chief is painted a peacock in his pride, that's with his tail fanned out, proper, that's in the colours of nature, between a fleur-de-lis and a lion passant guardant, both in gold. On a wreath in the 1st and 2nd, a Morphex argent, beaked sable, holding in its beak an eel proper, mantled 3rd doubled 1st. This is a little more complicated. The wreath, which you can see just on top of the helmet there, is described as being in the 1st and 2nd. This refers to the 1st and 2nd colours mentioned in this blazon. The first colour is argent, the second colour is azure, white and blue, so the wreath is white and blue. A Morphex argent beaked sable, a white bird with a black beak, holding in its beak an eel proper, so the eel is painted green with as much realism as can be mustered by the artist, mantled 3rd doubled 1st. Again, this refers to the order in which the colours come out, and you can see that the mantling is red and white. The 3rd colour in the description is gules for the chief, and the 1st colour again is argent. So the mantling is red and white. On the dexter side, an otter proper, and on the sinister side, a beaver proper. That's a beaver and an otter painted as well as the artist can do it. And these are described as langed jewels, which means red tongues, with a motto, Deo Fratus Erumpe. The arms were officially granted to Newark-on-Trent on December the 8th, 1561, but the motto was not granted until 1912. The motto, Deo Fratus Erumpe, Trust God and Sally Forth, is said to echo the valiant words spoken by the mayor of the town to the military commander, Lord Bellasyse, during the siege of Newark by parliamentarians in 1646. This was the third siege of Newark and the one that lasted longest. It was actually carried out by the Scottish parliamentarians rather than the parliamentarian army itself. The king had lost at the Battle of Naseby, had wandered round the country, and eventually decided that he would surrender to the Scots at Newark in the hope that they would take him back to Scotland, which was one of his kingdoms. Before they did that, the Scots said, "Go and tell the people in Newark to surrender," which they did. And Lord Bellasyse, not wanting to surrender, gathered a force of cavalry, sneaked out of the back door, and went off into the English countryside. The king, instead of being taken to Scotland, was sold to the parliamentarians and lost his head. The wavy bars, the crest, and the supporters, an otter and a beaver, all refer to Newark's riverside position, which has been of great importance to it throughout its history. And the fleur-de-lis and the lion are royal emblems, remembering the long association that Newark has with royalty, including, of course, the fact that King John died in Newark Castle. The peacock, in its pride, is taken as a symbol of local pride. The granting of a crest is one of the first grants made to a civic body. Only Ipswich had an earlier crest than Newark. The original grant of the crest describes the bird as a Morphex argent beaked sable holding an eagle proper in its beak. This raises an interesting question. What type of bird is a Morphex? It is not a Latin term, nor is the name for a heraldic creature. It does not feature in any word lists or vocabulary of the 16th century, and a Morphex appears in no other grants of arms anywhere ever. The nearest possible equivalent is the morpher, an anglicised corruption of morfran, Welsh for cormorant. Another possibility for the bird is a moorcock, better known as a grouse, which often features as a crest. But the College of Arms do make mistakes. After all, the Duke of Derbyshire appears in all college records as the Duke of Devonshire, due to a clerical error in the 14th or 15th century. If we look again at my coat of arms, it starts off with the field of the shield being covered in fur and described as ermine. Onto the ermine is a lion passant sable pierced in breast by a sword proper. A lion in the passant position, black, with a sword sticking into his chest. On a chief, palette of 6 gules and or, a chief with 6 vertical lines alternating red and gold, a battering ram proper. Self-explanatory, and I'm not sure how you'd explain it. With a wreath in the second and third, a crest of crossed battle axes proper. The wreath is in the same colours as the chief, which were the second and third colours defined, and the battle axes are drawn as proper battle axes. A mantle, argent doubled argent, with a motto, Parum potentes glandes quercus. The mantle is white on white, and the motto is self-explanatory. Where does this come from? Well, firstly, the arms of Admiral Lord Keith show the chief barret of 6, gules and oar. So that's the chief that appears on my shield. For Small, the family of Small shows a sable lion with a sword piercing its breast. My full name, though, is Albert Keith Small, and sometimes I was known as Bertie, so the crest for Bertie is 3 battering rams impale. They happen to have blue bands and heads, but my battering ram doesn't. And my initials are AKS. I played a guitar, so I was sometimes known as Axeman. And that's how the shield is put together. The motto, mighty oaks from little acorns grow. A nice motto for someone with the name of Small. If you've liked what you've heard, press like, and if you want to keep in touch, press subscribe so that you hear about any other features that we bring out. In the meantime, thank you for your time in watching this, our 50th program. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will keep in touch with the Muscombe History group channel when we start our meetings again after lockdown. So with that, our program on British Heraldry is now finished, and I wish you goodbye for now. Thank you.